So now we're going to start discussing trails, paths, and circuits. So let's start by talking about a graph. So a graph is made up of vertices, V0, V1, Vn, and edges. So we'll use E's for those, E1, E2, all the way up to EM. So let's suppose we have a graph. I'm going to call it G. Let G be a graph, and I'm going to let V, little v and little w, be vertices in our graph G. And now I'm going to define a few terms. Let's start with a walk. So a walk from V to W is a finite alternating sequence of alternating sequence of adjacent, I had it right, of adjacent vertices and edges of G. So the way you would denote a walk has the form V0, E1, V1, E2, so forth. So it alternates between vertices and edges. A trail from V to W is a walk from V to W that does not contain a repeated edge. So trails do not have repeated edges. And then a path from V to W, path, is a walk is a trail that does not contain a repeated vertex. So a path can't have a repeated edge, and it also can't have a repeated vertex. We'll say a closed walk is a walk that starts and ends at the same vertex. A circuit is a closed walk that contains at least one edge and does not contain a repeated edge. And then finally, the last definition is a simple circuit. A simple circuit is a circuit that does not have any other repeated vertex except the first and last. So I know that was a whole lot of definitions, and it does get kind of confusing, all of these new terminologies. So your book has this nice table. So I thought I would share that with you here. So repeated edge, repeated vertex, starts, ends at same point, and then must contain at least one edge. Least one edge. So let's start with a walk. For a walk, a repeated edge is allowed. A repeated vertex is allowed. It can start and end at the same place. It doesn't have to. And it doesn't have to contain at least one edge. A trail, so a trail is not allowed to have a repeated edge. It can have a repeated vertex, can start and end at the same place, and it's not required to have at least one edge. A path is not allowed to have a repeated edge, not allowed to have a repeated vertex, because it's not allowed to have a repeated vertex. It can't start and end at the same spot, and it does not have to contain at least one edge. So a closed walk was next. A closed walk, it was allowed to have a repeated edge, allowed to have a repeated vertex. It had to begin and end at the same spot, and it didn't have to contain more than one edge, at least one edge. And then the final two were, I'll just do them together, a circuit and a simple circuit. They were not allowed to have repeated edges. Was allowed for a circuit to have a repeated vertex, but not a simple one, except the first and last only. Yes, they both started and ended at the same place, and yes, they must contain at least one edge. So that's kind of a quick chart that lets you kind of see the differences really simply for these different types of objects.